Sometimes, remember, you are talking to a very old lady who doesn't even know what a solar is.
Umtu ngabantu. I've seen a lot of solar stock fails, so community members will come in together, they'll pool some money and then pay off one system over a period of time.
How can a household bounce back and adapt to being able to cope with power outages and become energy resilient?
Welcome to the Energy Conversations podcast, your go-to source for unpacking the complexities of the South African energy sector. My name is Siyothula-Mtshizana. I will be your guide, and every 2 weeks, we will be on a journey of bridging the knowledge gap surrounding South Africa's energy sector and the transition to a low-carbon economy.
Welcome to Energy Conversations, where we break down the complexities of the South African energy sector into digestible insights. I am your host, Siyothula-Mtshizana, and in this episode, we will be focusing on energy resilience as a practical reality, as we explore how South Africans can navigate daily power challenges, manage costs, and find ways to build a more secure energy future. Helping us unpack today's topic, we're joined by three phenomenal guests: Hleziphi, Mtshizana, Trevor, Mthombothi, and Lindiwe, Nkosi. They each bring grounded, actionable advice and fresh ideas for navigating South Africa's energy instability. Whether you're a household trying to figure out what 500 Rand can do for you as a power setup, or a community dreaming about a shade solar system, this conversation is for you. Because resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about building a smarter future together. But before we get into today's topic, I'd like to begin with some introductions and ask our guests to briefly share about their role in the South African energy sector. Hleziphi, if I can start with you, please.
So I am the founder and CEO of Inpursuit Renewable Energy, an alternative energy solutions company that was founded in 2017. So we provide services in providing turnkey solutions as well as tailored solutions in engineering, in installation and then operation and maintenance of various technologies. So we look into solar, battery energy storage, wind, in bigger project scale, gas, and then hybrid systems. So we service households, small business, operate in industry, as well as now powering cities as we become an independent power producer. So my journey really started in 2017 when I decided to set up as an electrical engineer as well as an energy professional, having worked from 2013 in getting involved in the independent power producer space. So that's where the dream started. And then almost 8 years later, we've been instrumental in the development and deployment of over 1,000 megawatt, almost touching a gigawatt, doing small systems for residential as small as 3 kilowatts. And then our largest project right now is sitting at 20 megawatts, but happy to share more about our journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hleziphi. Trevor, if I can ask you to please briefly introduce yourself.
My name is Trevor Mthombothi, and my background is in the electrical engineering space. I'm the founder and CEO of Mzanzi Solar. So what we do at Mzanzi Solar, really the vision is to power 1,000 homes by the year 2035. So 10,000 homes, So the vision started in 2020, and we offer services around 3 categories. The first category being energy efficiency and understanding your energy consumption as a client. And then we'll then maybe do a proposal as to how can you put interventions to ensure that you take care of your energy needs. Then we then do the installation, including the procurement and the supply and install of the equipment, being solar panels, inverters, and batteries. And then we also do the O&M, which is the operation and maintenance. So we take care of the system to ensure that there is long-term longevity and people can continue after we've done the installation to draw value out of the systems. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, Trevor Mthombothi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Trevor. Lindiwe, if I can ask you to briefly introduce yourself.
My name is Lindiwe Nkosi. I'm the founder of Linothando Electrical Services, as well as a co-founder of Lindiwe Electrical. Linothando was founded in 2020. Lindiwe Electrical was founded in 2023. Both companies focus on electrical. They are both electrical contracting companies here in South Africa. We specialize in new installations, maintenance of existing installations, alterations, verification, and certification. We later on moved to solar, not only solar, but backup schemes as a whole, because these services are not far from our main core businesses. They are just cousins. And also, we saw the opportunity and the solution that we brought to our clients since load shedding was attacking, and we navigated into backups. We are really looking into focusing on it now, bringing it to be one of our main core businesses as the opportunities allowing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindiwe. Let's dig into the topic. And in positioning this topic, I'd like us to start with what is energy resilience and really why energy resilience matters now. And Hleziphi, I'd like to start with you. With load shedding and energy instability affecting millions, what does energy resilience mean for the average household or small business?
I can start by explaining resilience in technical matters, but I think it is much more inclusive if we just look at, the concept of energy resilience in simple terms. And so I went into, the simple understanding of what resilience means. It means the ability to adapt and recover from adversity, stress, and changing situations. And it involves one to have emotional strength, adaptability, and the capacity to bounce back, potentially growing through that adversity. And for me, I thought that's exactly what energy resilience is. All levels of communities must be able to be adaptable, to have this resilience to then cope with stress levels that come from power outages, for which one of them comes from load shedding. There are many other kinds of power outages, but particularly then load shedding being, I think, an example. So communities must have the power to bounce back and adapt energy-wise. And I think we are at that point in time where even ordinary citizens need to be able to avoid emotional stress. Small business needs to avoid emotional stress. Big business needs to, mitigate the risk of the adversity that has an impact on business. And if we think about it that way, then it makes sense to all kinds of energy users. Because then, number one, what it means is you need to adapt. Find technology that works for you, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's solar, or whether it's hybrid systems, or even generators, all other alternatives. So then what we talk about is how can a household be resilient? How can a household bounce back and adapt to being able to cope with power outages and become energy resilient? How can a small business then also understand what technologies are there to be able to bounce back, from, the impacts of power outage, during production as well, those who are producing product, but also during production of services, those who are in corporate who are providing, service products. And then it then goes all the way up to cities. How can then cities be resilient, the cities that serve energy users? And so cities need to adapt into the technology that is within affordability, that is easily maintained. And in that, once you are able to have solutions in place, you tend to then lower your emotional impact. And that is what I believe is energy resilience.
Thank you very much for that. And I love how you've brought in the fact that it has an emotional impact. The reality is, and as much as we think of energy challenges and energy from a technical perspective, we've got to also understand the knock-on effect that lack of access to stable energy supply does have. It not only does it impact communities and individuals at an emotional level, but it also makes it very difficult to be able to plan. And I think it also then creates, in certain instances, a certain overwhelm and helplessness from a community and from individuals, just not knowing how do we actually move forward. And Trevor, I'd like to bring you in here in the sense that, as I've said, many people feel powerless when it comes to energy. I want to hear from you. What are the biggest misconceptions about energy resilience, and how can people take control?
One of the major conceptions that we find in the industry is that they believe, or there's a belief that in order to, solution, you need a big upfront investment. You think that in order for you to have as a solution, it needs to be big as well. It needs to cover for everything. And then, there's a hustle in you're managing your energy demand and using, you have to buy energy appliances. And I would like to dispel that by maybe categorizing 3 categories of interventions that one person can take along the journey. So the first level of intervention, I'll call it culture or behavior. So intervention looks at how are you using the energy that you get. An example is that if you ask a technical person a simple question to say, I have a light in the basement. I would like to make sure that this light only comes on during certain hours or during when somebody is in the room, and then off when somebody is not in the room. The likely answer that you're likely to get is that, you need to buy this sensor, you need to install such a sensor. But the common sense answer is that, hey, when somebody is not in the room, why don't you switch it off, So that will then be culture. You don't need a big investment. You don't need to start with a big investment. You just need to look at your behavior as an energy user to say, what is it that I'm currently doing with the power that I am getting? The second level of intervention will then be optimize. So with the power that I'm getting and the devices that I have, are they optimized to consume at their highest efficiency? Meaning, are they consuming what they need to be consuming without necessarily consuming any extra? An example of this would be maybe a fan or an aircon that is running to cool a room. It doesn't necessarily need to be at 18 degrees in order to cool that room. You can have it at an efficient degree of maybe 20 or 21 or even 22. It will still cool the room just as well, but also be at an efficient consumption level. So you can do some research around that. That, again, needs low to no investment again. Before we move on to the technologies, yes, there's technologies that you can then implement, for example, in the sense of a light, those sensors that we spoke about. You can then implement such technologies to assist, but it does not have to be an upfront investment, 1. 2, most of the systems that we are talking about here, for example, in a case of a solar system, most of them you can build on them. So you are able to start with a smaller system just to cater for maybe, let's say, just the lights, and then build on that long term as the investment comes in. That will be it. You need to take control, but you can invest in a modular solution, starting small and then scaling it over time as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Trevor. And I love the point you're making, that at the heart of it, it's behavioral change. And I think very often when we speak about the energy sector and specifically electricity generation, there's always that focus on the generation. So whether it's going to be coal or whether it's going to be solar. But I think what becomes important is that we need to first look at our behavior, and we first need to be driven by energy efficiency. Because the reality is, if you are wasteful with the electricity that you actually do currently have, it then has a knock-on effect in that you're needing to size for a bigger system. But I think if you're able to first control your usage, control your behavior, you're then able to, as you're saying, start small with a system that's then able to support that reduced consumption. And then over time, you can then look to building up as affordability determines. And I think it's also great that you've highlighted and touched on solar. And we're seeing a growth in the solar industry in South Africa, and a main prevalence of in terms of solar when we think about the future of South African energy sector. The broader topic of clean energy or renewable energy that's then being positioned as being able to support sustainability as we are looking at this transition to a low carbon economy. Lindiwe, I'd like to bring you in and just around this conversation around renewable energy and sustainability, and to just understand from you and understanding how does renewable energy also play a role in affordability and long-term energy security for South Africans.
Renewable energies plays a crucial role in affordability and long-term security for South Africans in many different ways. Firstly, being reduced energy cost. Renewable energies like solar and wind power can reduce cost for households and businesses, especially in rural areas where grid connection is very expensive. Renewable energies can help reduce electricity tariffs, making energy more affordable for low-income households. We're looking at job creations and economic growth. There is a need for solar installations for many households and businesses. People are running businesses. Load shedding has affected them so much. Some salons, some small businesses are closed during load shedding. That is 2-4 hours, 6 hours sometimes. So this can be really very beneficial to other businesses as well, even to students at school. Backup power, because we also install backup power like generator. Still, students must still learn even during load shedding. Some will be even writing exams or tests. So looking at a long-term security, energy independence. Under energy independence, we would say renewable energies can reduce South Africa's dependence on imported fossil fuels, meaning this can improve the energy security and reduce the impact of price for the country. I believe that by leveraging renewable energy, South Africa can promote affordability, energy security, and a long-term sustainability, alternately contributing to a more equitable and prosperous society. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I think really highlighting from an affordability perspective, because we look at and consider the price of solar per kilowatt over the years, we've seen a reduction in that price. So that already speaks to the fact that you're able to access more affordable electricity by looking at alternative energy supply. But I think it also, and I think what we're touching on is obviously the long-term security for South Africans as well, because we do need to recognize that at this point in time, there's not, and the reason why we then did need to have an increase in load shedding is the fact that the supply is not sufficient to meet the demand, and that obviously that then does pose challenges around energy security, and it then speaks to the fact that it is all about a mix. So it's not necessarily saying it's just renewable energy, but what we see is then the interplay between traditional energy from electricity from Eskom and renewable energy that's renewable energy, that it's in that mix of that, incorporating gas, incorporating, as you're saying, even battery storage, and in order to be able to provide that base load for renewable energy, that it all comes together to really play a role in ensuring affordability and long-term security. And now that we've unpacked and looked at, overall what is resilience, I think it's quite important that we dig deeper and look at what are these everyday challenges, and also just recognizing that the podcast and the audience, we're speaking to ordinary South Africans, and we're also speaking to those that perhaps aren't alive to or aren't in South Africa and aren't necessarily alive to what the actual challenges are on the ground. And I think that it's quite important that if we're speaking about resilience and we recognize that resilience and how resilient you are is in fact a response to a challenge, it becomes important then that we understand what these challenges are and how do we actually overcome them. And Hleziphi, I'd like to bring you back in the conversation and touching again around load shedding and the impacts that load shedding has had on families, students, and business. And I want to hear from you and in terms of what you're seeing in your business in supporting energy security. What are some of the biggest energy challenges that you've seen people facing daily?
What we see from the different sectors that we service, particularly in the residential space, I think it is definitely just trying to manage day-to-day life. but also including matters of personal safety as well. So in the residential areas, lighting for public spaces is one of those, but also for ordinary people, how they are impacted by other challenges upstream, particularly that impact service delivery. So, for example, the delivery of clean water is affected. I think we've seen examples in Hammarskraal and other areas where electrically powered water processing systems are at a standstill because of the impact of load shedding. And we also then see other basic services, health being impacted, education of our kids. That's what ordinary people at the residential sector would be dealing with due to the power outages. And then you have small business. I think as at 2024, small business, particularly in all sectors, whether it's in personal services, in agriculture, in agro processing, we're at least estimated to be losing about 1.2 billion rands a day at the peak of load shedding. And so for all sectors, business as well as ordinary people, close down of businesses, shatter dreams, really. And then loss of jobs, and then it trickles down because the issue of energy, it's more like a basic human needs. When that is taken away, then you see the entire ecosystem suffering. So when small businesses and big businesses suffer, then the jobs suffer, and then the people on the ground suffer, and then the children and all dependencies. And then big business as well, loss of jobs, retrenchments, because they've had to look at how to save business and scale their businesses down. Luckily, those who had investment could invest in backup systems, which would then include some of our clients in the banking sector and medium businesses as well. And then we go all the way up to the cities now. As indicated, cities are unable to then provide basic services. Service delivery is hugely impacted. And then from there, it's basically a domino effect all the way down and all the way up. And so that's where we see the impacts of the lack of resilience. So hence, this subject is becoming quite critical. The life skills that we have in overcoming challenges, in building resilience, also now need to be activated right now, where we now need to educate under the subject of energy resilience to ensure that the entire ecosystem of the South African population is not impacted such that the domino effect of which unfortunately hits the one that is all the way down in the value chain can be minimized.
Thank you very much for that, and really making a key point in that access to an adequate supply of electricity. It's the lifeblood. It's really the lifeblood of our economy. And energy really it's an enabler for economic activity. So when we don't have lights, it has so many knock-on effects. It impacts health. It impacts what we can do from an infrastructure perspective. It impacts what we can do industrially. So really highlighting, some real challenges that ordinary South Africans and businesses that are faced daily and that need to be addressed. And I think what also is a challenge is not only load shedding and perhaps inadequate electricity, but even where there is electricity available, it is the rising costs of electricity. I mean, NERSA has just recently announced 2 tariff hike of 12.7% for Eskom customers from 1 April, and another tariff hike of 11.32% for municipalities for municipal customers as of 1 July. And obviously, when we think about South African population that is already going under strain, that has already not received adequate relief in the recent budget announcement, and we just think that these electricity costs then simply just add additional pressure on households. And it then becomes important that households then start identifying or thinking of strategies of how they can actually respond to challenges of load shedding, but also respond to rising electricity costs. And Trevor, I'd like to bring you back in here and just hear from you what are some practical strategies that South Africans can use for managing energy use and reducing their electricity bill.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I like two things that have already been discussed. One was brought on by Hleziphi around the education. When you have an educated mass and it's not maybe one individual in the household that has maybe maybe let's say in a residential home, it is most often the household, the person that maybe leads the household that maybe feels the pain. But if every one of us is educated in the sense of energy efficiency and saving electricity, it can then be something where it's a combined effort. So some of the things that you can do as an everyday, day-to-day thing, we already spoke about the behavior, switching off lights, ensuring that when you boiling water for 1 cup of coffee, you don't need to boil the whole kettle. When you are taking a bath, you can use as minimal water as possible. You don't need to stay long in the bath, because most often you find that you stay long in the bath and then it's time now to actually bath, you then use an extra water. So those are some of the behavior changes that you can do. But when we move to things where maybe investment is then needed, you can then look to switch the lights from your high consuming appliances to things like LED light, smart plugs, and such, as well as there's another thing that you mentioned, which is tariffs. And when you look at your tariffs, there is something that most municipalities and most electricity providers are now implementing, which is time of use, meaning that not all electricity is sold at the same rate, simply put. So you need to have a look at that, analyze what and when can you buy the cheapest electricity, and then do some load shifting. We already do that in a solar sense when we encourage our customers to use as much of the sun as possible. So during the day, ensure that you do your heavy washing, boiling, and cooking during the day, such that at night you can then just use the normal essential appliances. So you can do the same even if you are on an electricity meter. You just check when is your time of use, and then how much do you buy electricity when. So you can then shift the heavy usage to those time of the days. But the primary thing, one, is education. Two, you need to monitor. So you need to understand what is it that is consuming your energy, and then try to find ways to mitigate that, whether it's low cost and changing the behavior around how you use it, or maybe you need to invest in a technology or invest in a more efficient appliances or component. So yeah, those are some of the things to curb the wasteful consumption that you have identified. You monitor, you educate, and then you mitigate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Trevor. And I love the emphasis on knowledge, because knowledge literally in this case is power. And just by knowing what you need to do, you're able to then adjust what your electricity use is and in turn reduce your electricity bill. But what I also like in terms of the strategies that you're proposing is that they are free. That, whether you have 50 Rand or nothing, you can already start implementing some of these strategies as early as today. And I think that's something that I think a lot of South Africans need to understand, that it's not necessarily always a cost issue. But I think also what we're seeing, and I guess maybe that's also where a lot of the confusion is coming from ordinary South Africans when it comes to energy usage, energy efficiency, and energy solutions. There's a lot of confusion because there's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of different service providers in the market that are presenting to South Africans all sorts of different solutions, whether it's solar, inverters, backup systems, and it can all become very confusing for the average South African in trying to figure out, how do I move forward? And Lindiwe, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation and see, how can we help South Africans make informed decisions regarding energy solutions without feeling overwhelmed?
First thing first, I would say education and awareness. People first need to understand those things. What is a backup system? Because a backup system involves a whole lot of types of backups. So they need to be educated on what is a backup system and what type is it and what does it do. So I think awareness programs where South Africans can be educated about that and where simpler language can be used, not too technical, but the language that someone can understand simply so that they can decide and make their informed decision. They also need to, my colleague has already mentioned it a lot, the culture of behavior, understanding your house, or you're understanding your consumption, understanding your load. You must be in a position of calculating your load, knowing how much power are your loads are consuming. Then you can be in a position of making an informed decision on what exactly are you supposed to put as your backup system, of which in most cases, as an installer, I always advise solar because I've seen a lot of good comments about it. Because besides just the solar being a backup, it also reduces your electricity cost, especially like during the day, like my colleague has already explained. Between 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock, I usually tell my clients that it's Christmas, where you can do most of your things. You can tell your mate to do the ironing, to run even the machine to wash and all that, knowing, understanding when to use what and how. So I think that can help a lot of South Africans to make informed decisions as well. And also comparison. I think they should be in a position of not hurrying to install, but doing a thorough research and comparison. Get about 4 or 5 installers, get quotations. As installers, as we issue out some quotations, we don't just issue out a quotation. Sometimes, remember, you are talking to a very old lady who doesn't even know what a solar is. So there is a lot of patience and a lot of education and a lot of communication between you and the client. So even the installers must be in a position of educating the clients as they send the quotation. And also clients must have as many as they can get. There's nothing wrong about that. You can have 5 quotes from 5 installers. And also something that I always encourage a lot, especially in townships and rural areas, because there is a well-known electrician in the area who just come and fix a plug or come and fix a stove. Remember, if you're looking for a backup, you shouldn't be looking to just calling that person. You need to do a thorough research of your installer, because this comes with a lot of compliance. You need, at the end of the day, you want a system that will not stress you, because already you are running away from a certain stress. You are looking for a solution. So be careful on who you're choosing to be your installer. Don't just call people who are not certified just because you want a solution at that time. This is more or less of your lifetime solution. Like my colleague Trevor explained, that with these systems, you can start small as 3 kilowatts, you continue to add, you continue to increase your system. It's the same as for solar system, for the panels as well. You can continue to add as many panels as you can. So I also encourage the South Africans to take their journey of backups like very seriously. Getting a certified installers is very, very important. So they should also look into that. And also like testimonials, learning from someone who has installed this backup for some time, learning from them, understanding what is it that this backup is doing for them. Get to know, engage with someone who has it, learn from that person as well. This will also help them to reduce a lot of stress and make well-informed decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lindiwe. And I think, again, it goes back to knowledge. It goes back to ensuring that you at least take that effort to inform yourself and get the necessary research in order to make that assessment. I'd like us to move to, getting to a practical place. What are the affordable, practical solutions that South Africans can look at? And Hleziphi, I'd like to bring you back in here. And the reality is that not everyone and not every South African can afford a full solar system. It's unfortunately, cost prohibitive for a number of South African systems. But surely there are other ways, or there's other solutions that can be looked at that perhaps are a bit more affordable. Could you share, some energy solutions that South Africans can look at from different budget perspectives, So whether you have 500 Rand, 5,000 Rand, or 50,000 Rand, what are the solutions that can be considered?
Building energy resilience at all levels is an intentional effort. And building resilience generally, it's not a once-off process. It is a phased approach where you build step by step. In this instance, in energy, looking at your needs, understanding what are my critical needs to be able to overcome the adversity associated with power outages. What you then need to understand is, based on the things I need on a daily basis that use energy, in my household, what are the 2 or 3 things that I need running and up in order for me to minimize, the impact of power outages? In my business, what are the machines? What are the processes that need to be up and running during that period? And then in cities as well, what are the services as a minimum that will need to be in place in order for me to provide for the citizens of the city? So I've looked at residential, I've looked at businesses of all sizes, and I've gone all the way up to the city. Now, looking at then your critical needs and the budget, then that's where you start thinking about solutions that are possible. So if you look at your budget of 500 rands, what would be your priorities at that point in time? I think it would be, how can I then lower my energy costs? Because energy costs are rising. So what I would recommend, in understanding of what are the big consumers of energy in a household, it's the cooking, it's the heating of water, and then the critical need usually is also lighting. This is what we see as the critical needs in a household. In business, for example, then you usually have specific machines that can keep the business running in that gap. And also and then lighting, obviously, because there has to be that for the labor to be able to work safely. And then looking at other supporting services. How many laptops do I need to have running? And then that will determine your critical load. And then at a city level as well, how many water treatment plants, which hospitals are critical for the city to service larger communities, and what areas need to remain lit in order to ensure good levels of safety. So then with your 500 Rand, you then need to say, I like that you mentioned it earlier on, that the solution to resilience is an energy mix. So electricity alone will not be able to solve for, energy challenges, particularly in the case where we might need to bring other forms of energy like gas, for example. Where would gas come in? We see gas come in the form of cooking, solving for cooking. So at 500 Rand, consider buying a gas cylinder, maybe, and also buying that 2-plate stove to ensure that your family can eat. And also invest in rechargeable lighting so that you can ensure that the kids can do homework. You can also see where you are cooking as well. And then if there is some saving, already prepare for the future where you buy the rechargeable bulbs, which also can go on for about an hour after load shedding. So if we go to someone with 5,000 Rand, it's basically then expanding that. So it will highly likely be for a small business to say, listen, if I was cooking using electricity, maybe now I need to invest in a gas stove for my catering business, and maybe look at gas for heating some of the water for the processes in the businesses. And then lastly, maybe also invest in a very small generator as well to keep your lights going as well. At 50,000, you are actually at a better position because you can do all of the above on a larger scale, particularly then for larger housing. And if you are focused on really powering electrical machines, then at 50,000, you can already get a system of around 3 kilowatts and up to 5 kilowatts within that budget. Obviously, that will depend on whether you're going for premium equipment or you're going just for equipment that will serve for the purpose. And then you can reinvest in the future to be able to then have, that full backup that will include solar and inverter, as well as your battery storage. You can alternatively, in the 50,000, rather go for a separate larger generator. But with the generators, you must consider then the higher running costs in the future, whereas solar actually provides you a free resource because you only just convert the free fuel, which is solar, into energy. So there are those kind of variations. So it is an intentional process. Every day, you need to now start educating yourself how many watts or kilowatts on a daily basis as a minimum that I need to run my household, to run my business, and to power my city.
Thank you for that. And really important, you need to know what your needs are. I think when I did my own assessment, for me, it was I need to have adequate lighting when there is load shedding, and I need to not be without Wi-Fi. I think we've added Wi-Fi officially on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So for me, the simplest way for me to get into having some kind of energy resilience for my own household was get the chargeable lights, get a backup for the router. And then over time, it's then looking at seeing, okay, what else can I add on? So we can all start somewhere. What's something that we need to really think about, and I think as Africans, a lot of us grew up with a full understanding and seeing firsthand the collective, the buying power of the collective. So being able to buy collectively. So growing up, seeing my mom and her friends, and they've got a stokvel, and they know that if each one is putting in this much money, they're able to buy in bulk and are able to get cheaper, or they're able to solve for more just by working as a collective. And I think that's something that we probably need to see or bring into the fold when we're thinking about energy solutions and how we can collectively as communities try and gain some traction in this way. And Trevor, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here and hear from you around this topic of community-driven and energy projects and them potentially gaining traction. Have you seen any, examples or, of successful neighborhoods or groups working together in being able to afford energy solutions?
Yes, no, definitely. You know what they say, umtu ngabantu. So that is the African proverb that, a lot of people are applying out there. So we have seen quite a lot of community-driven projects gain traction, and the successful ones, as you already mentioned, is the stokvel. I've seen a lot of solar stokvel. So community members will come in together, they'll pool some money and then pay off one system over a period of time. Once that's done, then they move on to the next person and so on and so forth. It's something that has already been used for other means. So groceries, moving it and adopting it for a solar solution is then easy for a lot of communities out there. As you mentioned, there's the economies of scales as well. It makes sure that we can circumvent the high upfront cost and lower the cost. We currently also have a community such as the one for solar, where solar stokvel, where we are implementing for them. We do their installations as and when they collect and have money for the next person. So that is one of the successful ones. I've also heard of communities that will maybe pull some money together and then set up a community center where it has all the lighting, it has maybe some Wi-Fi, as you already mentioned. It also have power that you can then maybe go and charge your phone and your laptop and then maybe do some research and continue to. So it also works as a library. That's something that I've heard that has been implemented. I think it was in KZN, where there's a community center equipment was bought for the community center by the community, and then they can then go out there and then be able to then recharge themselves. There's some pilot programs about just maybe some communities that household will then come in together and then install a system that is centralized. So a system that it's a solar system, or be it a backup generator, that can be able to power their homes or the whole village, that is centralized, maybe installed somewhere outside, that they can then, all be able to benefit and then manage it that way. There's also some financial innovative solutions around this whole solution of let's come together, let's pull in some money, let's maybe buy prepaid, the solution that we need. So have somebody install, and then we can then go and buy backup on prepaid. So as much as we buy maybe base load from suppliers like City Power and Eskom, we can then pull together, have a system installed, but then you then buy on prepaid as and when you have the money. So yeah, those are some of the things that are gaining traction. It certainly is an exciting space, to explore onto more. But like you said, umtu ngabantu, it's something that we understand as Africans. We understand working together. We understand coming together, pulling our resources and saying, you have this, I have this. Let's come together. Let's make it work. So yeah, it will be exciting to see how this initiative grows and where it takes us.
Thank you for that. I think what it then says, in as much as solar or the energy sector seems like a new industry, we can easily go back to basics and see how were our mothers affording groceries? How were they affording certain, to be able to, if there's a bereavement, and be able to get the necessary support? How was that being done? And it really was to your point, like ubuntu, like umtu ngabantu, and it becomes really so important that we go back to our roots from that perspective, and know that I'm able to help. I'm not on my own in trying to solve this, and if we're thinking as a collective, we'll actually go further. And you touched on a very important point, or a key point as well, in terms of financing. And financing is often seen as a major barrier. But as you're saying, there's some innovative financing models that we're seeing. And Lindiwe, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation and maybe just discussing some of these innovative financing models. I mean, we're seeing things like rent to own. We're seeing government even coming to the party with certain incentives, as we've touched on cooperative buying. What are some of the solutions that you can speak to that can help more people access energy solutions?
The rent to own, rent to buy, whereby we sell solar as a service. Most of the companies, they do offer solar panels as a service, allowing customers to pay a monthly fee for the power that they have used. Rent to own a solar, customers can rent panels with the option to purchase them after a certain period of time. Clients can always explore. And like you have said, grants and subsidies. Governments provide grants and subsidies to support the adoption of renewable energy solutions. I remember, I think, was it 2 years ago, my accountant also helped me to apply for the incentive of installing all my solar installations during that critical load sharing time, because I really did a few, including PSA. The whole backup system for them in all provinces was done by Linothando Electrical Services. So clients can explore all those things as long as they research well and understand well terms and conditions and all that, because it comes with a lot of understanding in terms of terms and conditions. Platform-based crowdfunding, whereby platform connects investors with projects, allowing individuals to invest in renewable energy projects. Community-based crowdfunding as well. Communities or organizations, they negotiate with suppliers to purchase energy solutions at discounted rates. I think it's more or less similar to what you were also discussing now. And also a pay-as-you-go, whereby customers pay for solar energy as they use it, with the option to upgrade or purchase the system at the end of the day. Pay-as-you-go energy storages, whereby clients pay for energy storage systems as they use them, with the option to upgrade or purchase the system at the end of the day. All these options, they can be explored. We do have clients who are already exploring them. So far, so good. We don't have problems at all. And also the monthly base one, whereby the client agrees that you can actually, yes, you will be renting the system, but he's already paying for it on a monthly basis. Let's say the system was 100K and he did not have the 100K at that time. Then we say, okay, so you are going to pay the 100K in the next coming 24 months. Then we divide it, we do the calculations depending on how much the client afford to pay on a monthly basis for that certain period of time that you have already agreed on. Clients are already exploring ESA providers. Companies provide ESAs which allow customers to pay for energy sufficient upgrades through energy savings. So there are a lot of them that clients can just research and know more about and explore them. Even the banks, I know that they are also offering energy systems loans. So you can even negotiate with your bank, agree on the system that you want to agree on. They check all they need to check and see if you qualify. There are a lot of energy efficiency funds as well that finance energy projects. I think these innovative financial models can help increase access to energy solutions, especially for low-income households and marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I'd like to wrap up or conclude today's conversation by looking towards the future and the future of energy resilience. We've spoken a lot around and renewable energy in terms of solutions, and that then really seems to be or has been positioned as quite a key element of the future of energy resilience. And Hleziphi, I'd like to bring you into the convo here around, many people really still believe that solar and renewable energy is unreliable or too expensive. What are some of the biggest myths that you have come across in relation to these technologies, and what is the truth?
Definitely the affordability myth it's still there, mainly because when solar came in and other accessible technologies that are similar, like now battery energy storage, when it came in, it really was indeed at an expensive pricing point. But the reason for that was that it's the nature of technology adoption. So when it comes in, there is less buyers of the product, and so you are buying it at a higher price. And so what one then needs to look at and check themselves on the myth, because a myth over time can actually resolve itself. So one then needs to see how the technology is being adapted. And in just simple principles, as technology is being adapted, solar, it becomes more cost effective. We will remember that at the beginning, for example, affordable systems were solar systems without batteries, because batteries were expensive to add on. And so as battery energy storage has now been adopted at all levels of our community, households, all the way to powering cities, we see that the cost of batteries has become more cost effective, which is why right now in South Africa, the majority of the systems are solar battery hybrid systems, because of how the adoption has changed, and therefore has also helped with affordability. The fact that they are not reliable, yes, at the beginning, they were not so reliable because of issues related to efficiency. So what you could generate from one panel was lower at the beginning. Once again, as we are progressing, panels and batteries are now, producing more energy out of them, even at, the ordinary capacity as well. So efficiency is also playing a key role. So you are getting more now from your panels and your batteries than you were getting 10 years ago, because of the effective and efficiency improvements on the technologies. Now, we know that renewable energy sources, yes, are dependent on nature. So, for example, the sun is unpredictable, although we can look at the weather, but eventually, nature decides what it wants to do on that day. But this one also then is a subject to resilience. We know that it's a fact, right? We've always known that the sun, the wind, or the water is not reliable. So the myth to be debunked on that is the fact that this is a fact. And so then how do you overcome the facts that affect the technology that you choose? Then you find a technology that closes that gap on unreliability. So which is why we then see now solar systems and battery systems that are now paired with generators, because generators are much more reliable and not necessarily impacted by nature. So when your sun is not there and your battery is depleted, then you have a third option, intentionally so, because that nature is not dependable. So then when those run out, then you kick in your generator. What still makes this option efficient is that it's the priority of which installers design these systems on. So they will give you a priority of solar, then they will give you a second priority of battery to use, and then the most expensive form which is in this instance would be a petrol or diesel generator, will be the last resort. And so over time, you can still see that even if you've commissioned the generator as one of the components of your system, you are still at a positive compared to someone who still remains solely dependent on the main grid. So as I'm talking now, I can actually see lights coming on ordinary people's minds, because I don't think this is information that is available out there. I think people just tend to start moving away or not making the choice to engage further on the subject of transitioning to renewable energy, just because the pricing point, it just, is a deal breaker for them. And also, those myths around situations that are natural, that can be avoided. And so when we then open up people, when they ask a pressing point, they open up their minds, it takes them to the next one. So how do I make it reliable? Then you can have a conversation around the fact that there's actually another solution that closes or solves for the myth where you thought, it was not solvable for. So those are some of the critical things that we see. And the other, I don't think it's a myth. I think it's a silent factor around what happens then about the solutions in the long term. What we know is that solar needs to be maintained. I think the myths around that, the panels, they last for 10 years or a warranty, and then lifespan is 25 years. It doesn't mean that they must sit there for 25 years not having been maintained. Yes, solar is a low maintenance technology, but like your car, it needs service when it has reached certain mileages. Solar needs to be cleaned when, it has experienced dust over a long time, when it has been sitting outdoors, being beaten by rain and hail. You need to go and check on it. Similarly with your generators as well. I know they are robust machines. They've been proven over the years, but even then, you need to service your system, as a preventative measure, rather than having to now deal with the risk having happened that your system has given in. So those would be my top three. And if you do it as a routine, it is actually more cost effective. If you know that every 3 months I have to maintain it, call Mzanzi Solar to come and check it every 3 months, or call Inpursuit to come and check it every 3 months, just when nothing is wrong with the system. Because when you call us, when we have to leave, the office or the warehouse immediately, you can imagine that there will be cost implications. And when you look at those agent calls over time, they accrue more cost as compared to you having calling us just to come and check that everything is still working well. We can then pick up points where it was leading to something serious that could maybe destroy your battery or burn or your panels, which is another major loss. So maintenance is quite critical. Understanding other solutions that close the gap, and understanding that, the adoption of the technology has become more cost effective. I think those will be the top 3 myths that you will need to debunk in order for you to then move to this next level of starting to craft your energy resilient solution at any level, at your house, at your business, and at your city.
And I think what's really important for us to consider is there's money to be made in crisis. And in my view, energy poverty is an economic growth opportunity. And the answer what we need to answer is for who? And it then becomes very important that we're identifying ways in which we can make that economic growth opportunity be a local one, be for the benefit of South Africans on the ground. So as you're speaking about the maintenance of these systems, the cleaning of solar panels, the light bulb that goes on in my mind is that, but these are opportunities for us empowering women, youth, and township entrepreneurs, because if there's maintenance that needs to be done or a call out that needs to be done, you're not going to be able to get to all of the households. But if you then have, you've trained youth installers, or you've trained a team of technicians that are literally there for maintenance, I think it becomes a really great opportunity. And Trevor, I want to bring you in, and maybe to flesh this out a bit more around some economic growth or economic opportunities for women, youth, township entrepreneurs. And I want to understand from you, and maybe you can help our listeners to understand how can more people get involved in the business of energy solutions, whether it's selling, installing, maintenance. How can more people get involved?
I think you summarized it quite well. We are currently in a global shift where we are, seeing a global shift in our energy use, and we are in a global energy transition. Basically, we have to be careful that no one stays behind or no one is left behind. So whether it's women, whether it's the youth, so everyone has to find a way to participate. And we've spoken about this, but I think it starts again with the education. Obviously, there has to be policies to ensure that the sectors that are dealing with education are prioritizing or are looking at this in the same manner that we are, to saying this is something that is big or can be big. And globally speaking, it is a transition away from fossil fuels. So things like enhancing our education, whether it's through SETAs, there's a lot of private institutions now that offer, your renewable skills and your new age skills in the sense. So those are some of the things that I believe you start with the foundation. You make sure that everyone that wants to participate has the education to understand what the sector is about, because it can get very technical. Those technical skills are still needed at the basis of it all. And we mentioned maintenance as well. So that's one of the services or one of the sectors where it is an ongoing function that you then have to perform. It is low level in as far as the technical skills needed. So that's again another way that we can then bring women. We can also bring youth into the sector. We also spoke, or we also mentioned a little bit about local entrepreneurships, or sponsoring them or supporting them. I think that those are the people that are in the local to where the systems are to be installed. If they can get empowered, that's also whether it's entrepreneurship skills, whether it's again the technical skills as well, to be able to go into the sector, or be able to bring in new skills into the sector and be able to bring it at a local, less costly, have a call out from somebody that is far, have somebody that is local just on standby to be able to maintain those systems. And then another way that I can think of is maybe leveraging digital technology. We are in the AI age as well, as much as we are in the transitioning from into renewable energies. We are in the AI space. So looking to study or looking to find those digital ways to say, how can we ensure that maybe the monitoring of a system does not necessarily need to be, somebody that is skilled. You can just train somebody to say, okay, look at X, Y, and Z, look at the alarms, make sure that you understand what the alarms mean, then you can dispatch somebody. So those are some of the ways, and I'm sure there's more that we can think of to just say, how do we then bring in people that may not necessarily maybe have the skills, train them, ensure that they can then participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Trevor. And I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. There's really not a lot of opportunity. I love what you're saying in terms of AI and innovation. I think that's a very key area, especially for young people, because I think when we think of technology, those of us, over 40, some of the stuff can be very daunting and very confusing, whereas young people are still, they're not afraid of technology. So let them get in there, let them go forward and come up with the innovation that's necessary. Lindiwe, I want to close off with you. And we've had a lovely conversation. We've discussed a lot in terms of energy resilience, what can be done, different solutions, the challenges. And I want to hear from you, and just in terms of closing up. So I'm an ordinary South African. I've been listening to this episode. There's been more clarity that's been provided, but I'm still feeling a bit overwhelmed. If I, as Lindiwe, where would you say, where's my go-to point right now from this episode? Where should I begin? Just in terms of initial steps that I can take in my energy journey.
Start by assess your energy usage, track your energy consumption, monitor your energy bills and usage patterns to understand where your energy is going. Conduct an energy audit, walk through your home or buildings, identify areas where your energy is being wasted. Set your energy goal, define your motivations after listening to everything that you have heard. Determine why you want to start your energy journey. Obviously, one of the reasons could be cost saving, environmental concerns, energy independence, and also problems like load shedding whenever it comes. We mentioned lights a lot as one of the most essential things that needs to be on a backup system. Find out like which light consume less power, because that could be something that is also very important. Change your lights, move to LED lights.
Thank you very much for that wrap up, Lindiwe. And that's it for this episode of Energy Conversations. As you heard today, energy resilience isn't just for the wealthy or the tech savvy. It's for every South African household, students, entrepreneurs, and even the elderly navigating our shifting energy landscape. From practical hacks to long-term strategies, what stood out most is that we are not powerless. There are choices that we can make, communities we can build, and support that we can unlock. So as you go back into your day, ask yourself, what's one step I can take towards energy resilience today? And until next time, let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you for joining us on the Energy Conversations podcast, powered by Bayaka Infrastructure Partners, an authorized financial services provider, and the African Energy Leadership Center at the Wits Business School. Together, we are committed to empowering communities and fostering meaningful dialogue around the South African energy sector. Remember to subscribe and let's shape South Africa's energy future together.